noise, and a night punctuated by the droning engines of security vehicles going back and forth along the mountain road. I hadn't known Cameron was dead at first. Next of kin weren't informed until later. In a 55-inmate brawl, it's apparently impossible to finger the murderer of a particular individual, and because unlawful killing was hard to prove, Cameron's passing was recorded as misadventure. So now my brother was gone. His death remained unpunished, and I'd been stranded here, a 33-year-old woman working night shift at a Highland hotel, studying the place that had penned him in. I watched the distant buildings, listening to the moan of the siren. Through curtains of snowfall across the loch, I could see the intermittent flicker of lights. The prison gates were open now. 3 distant vehicles were pulling out, a car either side of a van that looked like a high-security transport. That might explain the disturbance. An inmate leaving, violence erupting as desperate scores were settled. The siren continued its looping moan, and I watched the convoy turn left towards us, setting off along the mountain road in our direction. I thought about the drivers, thought about my 2-hour drive tomorrow. I'd have the advantage of daylight, but we'd had plenty of snow in the last week, and plunging temperatures had hardened the drifts into sculptured pack. The wind had changed direction, polar air from Siberia triggering red weather warnings, and Storm Ezra had arrived, bringing new snow and turning the old into ice. Driving on a night like this was surely an act of desperation. By morning it would be clearer, though. It would be. Everything ended in 12 hours. At 7 a.m, Mitchell, my colleague on the day shift, would park his Fiat 500 outside reception and trot across the tarmac in his brogues and hotel livery. In the course of a 15-minute handover, I'd bring him up to date for the last time, put my bags in the boot of my car, and go. I retreated back into my room, shutting the noise out and warming myself at the electric heater before shucking off my coat and dressing for work. I tugged a vest on beneath my blouse for extra warmth, pulled on my trouser suit, and buttoned my jacket before removing my badge. Remie Yorke, it said. Underneath, the gold plastic was embossed with, "How can I help?" The MacKinnons' last 2 guests knew me by name, so I left the badge on my bedside table, next to the few items I hadn't yet packed. My pro-turf hockey ball, my eyewitness guide to Chile and Easter Island, my Spanish phrase book. Locking my door behind me, I followed the 3rd-floor corridor past empty rooms to the old service stairs. The prison sirens must have stopped. The only sound as I descended was the old hotel creaking in the rising wind. The MacKinnon is 16 guest rooms in a grand Victorian lodge tucked into a dell at the bottom of Farrygate, steep-roofed, with turret windows and 2 spires rising above squat chimneys. Guests adore the conical clock tower, the formal gardens and the wisteria across the entrance. When I'd arrived to take up the post of night manager 18 months ago, all I'd needed was somewhere to work that was driving distance from my brother Cameron's prison cell. To find instead this lochside curio had been a sliver of good news in a world of bad. At first, I'd cherished the hope I might actually fall in love with the place. My flat in Leith had always felt temporary, and even though I didn't visit often, I'd felt cast adrift when Mum and Dad split up and the Northumberland family home was sold. And those first few months at the MacKinnon really had seemed like they might be a fresh start. I'd almost allowed myself to relax. Once or twice, I'd even woken in the morning refreshed. Then there'd been the violence at the prison and Cameron's death. After that, I'd been forced to return to my previous existence of permanent, exhausted vigilance. But those days were nearly over now. In 16 hours, I'd be on a plane. Downstairs, I checked reception, then took the main corridor towards the bar. The grandfather clock stood sentry outside the garden room. The kitchen still smelt of roast game and garlic, even though the catering staff had spent the afternoon buffing work.